Okay, so welcome to your next in the cognitive biases course, okay? The cognitive heuristics, the allures, the tendencies, all right? The logical fallacies. Today, we are talking about a very special one right there. It is the sunk cost bias, okay? So in many texts that you might read in books and everything, the sunk cost bias can be described a lot of times as the sunk cost fallacy, okay? Same thing, we're talking about the same sorts of definitions and situations in which sunk cost can affect you. Now, like I always say, some people call them fallacies, some people call them heuristics. You just gotta kind of use a little bit of common sense and like, okay, is what they're talking about the same thing as this? Yes, in this case it is. What is sunk cost fallacy though? This is a very special one, I think, because it is one of the ones that I believe is most easily, identified with. Meaning you can look in your life easily and see this taking place more easily than some of the other ones. There's several that are kind of easy, but this one specifically, especially when you look back on the past and you stuck with something longer than you should have, that's a very sunk cost bias sort of thing to do. All right, you can see to where like, yeah, man, I should have quit this before I did, or I should have threw in the towel or whatever it is. So let's go ahead and define it in some sort of in just some words, okay? So I would say the sunk cost bias can be defined as a period or an experience or a situation in which you stick with something because you have sunk, so to speak, or invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money, or whatever, okay, into something. And now you're thinking, okay, I don't want to, quit it because I've put so much work into it, right? That's sunk cost fallacy. If you've ever basically been in a situation to where you're like, yeah, this thing doesn't seem to be working out, whether it's a relationship, and this could be romantic, professional, with your family, or whatever, and you kept it going on much longer than it was helpful or healthy even, and you look back and be like, man, I should have left that a long time ago. That's sunk cost bias, because your brain basically goes, okay, things that we put a lot of time into, things that we put a lot of our money, right, we invest into, or we put effort, or even just thinking. If you sit around and think about something for weeks on end, that's sinking cost into it. You're sinking effort into it, right? So that's basically what sunk cost bias is. There are plenty of tremendous books on the topic. In fact, I have one right here. This book, Quit by Annie Duke, is basically a whole book about this bias. Now, it's not exactly about that completely, but she goes over it many times. And Quit, as its title suggests, is about knowing when to throw in the towel, like I said. That's why she has these boxing gloves hanging off of the queue. When is it time to hang your gloves up? You don't want to keep sticking with something because, like, for example, boxing, if your body is starting to tell you, like, hey, dude, you can't do this anymore, and you stick with it anyways, you know what happens? You end up having a heart attack or something. But that's not just with that. Obviously with relationships, right? Every one of us probably can think of a relationship we had, whether it was romantic or otherwise, that we let it hang around and wear out its welcome, right? Longer than it was helpful to us. And in fact, it usually started hurting us pretty bad, and we were like, dude, can't do this anymore, right? All that's sunk cost. Now, let's go ahead and put an example on the board of sunk cost, and I have a good one for y'all that a lot of us actually will probably be able to identify with this specific one, at least somewhere in our life. So I have a friend, and we will call him just my friend, okay? That way, nobody can track this person down or any of that. I could say his name was Fred or something. We'll just call him Fred. That's fine. Fred, my friend. Okay, my friend Fred. So, what's up with Fred? Well, once upon a time, Fred went into a field. Okay? So, this is what he did. He went into a field that he didn't like a lot of us do. He went into something that was computer related, like IT or something, okay? And why did he do that? Well, did he have interest in IT? No. here we go. Here, let's put Fred IT right here was his, and we'll just put some periods in there. Was his field, okay? This is his field, Fred's field. Okay, he was in IT, he did some computer programming or whatever it was, okay? No hate on IT, it's just an example. And what happened was he didn't really like it. Now, as all of us know, IT is a bustling field. You can definitely make money in there if you just try, pretty much, because it's such in demand. Here's the problem, though. This is where he was sinking a lot of cost into it. Fred came up to me, and he was like, hey man, you know, I just don't like my job anymore. I don't like this industry. You're always having to learn a bunch of new things, you know? It's like, it's kind of like being a doctor almost, in that there's always more medicines to learn. There's always more procedure. There's always new research about healthcare and whatever. And with IT, that is very much the same thing, okay? And we'll get to healthcare in a second, actually. And he was basically like, you know, I don't really like IT. I don't like all of that. Having to go through, right, like I was saying, and learn new things basically on a monthly basis. And the kind of work that I do, I sit at a desk all the time. It's not really working out. And I was like, well, Fred, what caused you to get this job in the first place? And what do you guys think it was? Did y'all say this? Because that's exactly what it was. All right, and this is something you definitely can get by going into IT. Like I said, no hate on IT. There's several parts of or departments of IT, let's say, that I'm really interested in personally. Okay, this man was badly aspected with that. Now, what did he do? He kept doing it. He was like, yeah, but guess what? I don't know, 4-year degree, you know, 4 to 8 years, depending on how you count them, in work, in the field, right, doing it, getting maybe a promotion here and there, taking on some new responsibility, learning. That's another thing, man. Post, let's say, college learning. Let's just say, yeah, post-college learning. And as we said, how much of that you got to do? A lot of it. To be honest, it depends on which branch of IT you go into, but he was in one of the ones that for the most part, he had to kind of be on it all the time, right? So there was that. There was all the money. We got money up here, but that's what he was going for. There's all the money he spent on that. There's all the efforts and the sleepless nights and all the days he spent at work. We have that here, 4 to 8 years in the industry. Like I said, depending on how you count them, it might have been more than that, actually. And also, it's not just, as you know, when it comes to work, it's not just what goes on while you're at work. But if you get off work and half the time while it's your free time or your days off, you're thinking about work, you might as well just be there anyways. That is part of sunk cost. The more you commit to, or commit energy and focus, and your life revolves around something, the harder it is to quit. So he was sinking all this cost in here. This doesn't even talk about everything else involved in it. Right, this is just a quick example. Y'all can probably be like, oh yeah, I'm in IT. There's some other things you sink in there, right? You got to get these certifications, you know, every couple of years or whatever. You got to stay on top of this. You got to do your own research outside of it, seeing what new technology is. You gotta. You see what I mean? So he sunk all of this cost into the field of IT. And so even after he kind of brought this to my attention and he was like, you know, I don't really know what to do about this. I just don't really like it anymore. I want like a fresh start. It still took him a while. And I was like, well, we'll do something different. Why don't you try something different? And Fred was like, yeah, I need to. Okay. So wind the clocks forward 6 months, and we're talking about it again. He had done nothing to get out of this. He was just basically maintaining the status quo of him being in this field, right? Which is a fabulous field if you like it. All right, he didn't though. He was not the kind of person that liked doing this sort of work. It's probably one of those unfortunate realities to where from the outside it looks really glamorous, or the grass looks greener and stuff. You're like, ooh, I want to be this kind of computer engineer or whatever the case is. And the money is good, and the money is damn good. But here's the deal. His day-to-day happiness level, you know, was just going down. All right, and 6 months later, I talked to him. He had done nothing, and I asked, well, why? And he's like, well, I I don't know, like, I've already done so many years in this, I wouldn't want to completely throw that away, right? When you hear somebody say some stuff like that, or you think it yourself about something, that is sunk cost bias. That is your brain saying, here, let me give you excuses to not change, right? Now, sometimes you want to stick with something. Obviously, sometimes there's going to be rocky days and weeks and even months. There are seasons of rockiness in any field to where you're like, I'm just not feeling it right now, right? This wasn't the case for him. It just was not doing it for him any longer. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You probably yourself have been in this situation with something. This is just an example. So Fred, finally, I talked to him 6 months after that. And he was like, yeah, I really do need to get on this, man. I need to start looking at stuff. I was like, well, haven't you looked already? He's like, I've looked a little bit, but he sees everything through what? Through this right here, through this lens. This is another issue with the sunk cost bias, because the more even if you hate the thing, now he didn't like outright absolutely abhor IT, right? Sometimes he probably did. It was just like, dude, this is not the right thing for me, all right? It's great if it's for other people, that's fine, right? But he was just like seeing everything through the lens of IT. The brain is like, hey, you see IT there, you see it there, see how it kind of helps you with this, and you understand that. And it was throwing up all of these objections, basically, to him leaving that and doing something else. So 6 months go by again, and he was like, I've looked a little and whatever. And I was like, dude, come on, you're gonna have to, if it's really causing that much of a trouble, especially 12 months after we initially had the conversation. So I was like, Fred, you gotta do something about this. So, and I laugh about it. It's not funny. It's like a cruel irony sort of thing. Guess what? A whole nother year goes by. 12 more months. Fred is still doing this and hasn't really made any progress getting out of it. So that's 2 years since he brought it up. Now, obviously, by the time it gets bad enough for him to actually bring it up, he's been feeling this way for a while, so who knows? He might have not liked this for the past 2 years, and then put 2 more years on top of that after I heard about it, right? I mean, it's, for sure, this has happened in my life, it's happened in your life, and everyone's, but the brain, because of these cognitive biases, has this tendency to, it has you see through things through the lens of, hey, the status quo. The status quo is basically what's going on with you right now. What's your life look like right now? What do you get up and do every day? And it doesn't want to change those. Not because it's bad, right? The cognitive biases aren't necessarily good or bad. They're tools, and if you know how to harness them, you can sink a bunch of cost into something that you want to, right, be a part of. Like, like having a healthy diet, getting your steps in every day, however many that needs to be for you, right? Continuing education all the time. You should be doing that anyways with whatever field that you're in. By the way, if you're not able to continue your education with whatever field you're in, that's a good indication that it's not for you, that you're now becoming a victim of that. Because you should, just by your very nature, kind of be interested. You know how, how you ever see those jokes to where, or you may have even done this in school, probably not so much anymore because we have phones, but when there were comic books, or when there were we got manga now, right? The Japanese comics or whatever, and you'd have a textbook, a big textbook, because they're big, open, but inside of that you'd have a comic book open, right, or something. That's what you really were reading, but your teacher could only see the outside, thought you were reading the textbook. The comic book inside of a textbook thing, that comic book should be your continuing education. You should be trying to sneak time to be trying to learn more about your, right, whatever it is that you're in, your industry, your job, your career. If you're not doing that, that's a good example of you getting burned out. And think about it. Are you staying because you sunk too much cost in it and your brain is actually like, dude, no, you shouldn't do that. There's a happy ending to this story. My friend, Fred, always liked helping people. And he always liked, like I said, I told you I was going to talk about the medical field here in a bit. He always liked the idea of being in the medical field. So what he did is he became a registered nurse. And he really likes that. One of the things he really likes about it, by the way, is one of his one of the things he didn't like about this is you just sat around all day, practically. When you're a nurse, maybe not every single nurse out there, every nurse I've known is running around all day. They're not sitting down in a chair. I mean, sometimes when you're doing like your paperwork, I suppose, your charting and your like or any of those things, right? Yeah, we get it. But do you also walk around a lot all day? You probably do. You got to go visit patients, you got to go, clean beds and rooms and deliver medication or whatever it is that nurses do. He liked that. And he liked being up and around. He said it gave him energy and stuff, and he liked the helping people part. And he liked, what else? He was the continuing education, like I said. He would sneak time, like, when you're sitting on your phone just scrolling through it just to kill some time. You look at some of your hobbies. I don't know what y'all do. This guy, part of that time, he would use to learn more about healthcare. He was well aspected with that, and it worked out great. Isn't that a nice story? Now, it can work the other way. I've known plenty of people, probably more, that went into healthcare, and they were badly aspected with that, and they should have gone into IT or something else, okay? But that is sunk cost bias for you. Remember, don't be a victim of sunk cost. And read this book, Quit, by the way. This is a good book with a lot of courageous stories of people who became huge in things and had huge success, and you know what, they did this right here. They were like, you know what, when I put everything together, it's not for me, I need to do something else. And they walked away from huge things to do something else, and for the most part it's a happy ending. But you've got to know that kind of in your soul, right, or whatever, to know it's not for you. So anyways, that's sunk cost bias. If you have the premium version of this course, and I do recommend that all of you get it, because we're going to go over this 2 or 3 times in depth, okay, with a lot more examples. And if you have that, we'll see you there. If not, we will see you on the next one, all right?